Now, the next part of the story, and that is research translation. And the storyteller is Professor Claudine Bonder. Claudine is the head of the Vascular Biology and Cell Trafficking Lab, the Centre for Cancer Biology at the University of South Australia. She has 20 years in advanced medical research. She's a prolific publisher of scientific papers. She's also an inventor on patents. And so she's going to talk to us today a little bit about research translation.
Thank you for having me, and thanks to the committee for inviting me to share some of my experiences, hopefully some points that I hope will resonate with some of you. And thank you to Jodie for sharing that story. It leads really nicely into what I'm hoping will be an inspirational part of how we can make things better. All right, so here we go. So research translation. I've become very passionate about translation in medical research. I'm passionate about students knowing that what's the point of doing research if you don't publish it and nobody sees it? And what's the point of doing medical research if you can't translate it? Not everything has traction, not everything can be translated, but those that really do deserve a good crack should really get a go. So how do we do that? So the experience that I've had comes from my involvement in a number of CRCs, so federal funding to bring together a number of different stakeholders to advance medical research in these examples. CRCs also support other types of initiatives. So since 2007, I think, I've been involved in the CRC for biomarker translation, and after that, CRC for cell therapy manufacturing. I've got many stories to share about how those two very different bodies worked. I learnt a lot, but I'm really proud to say that from at least the cell therapy manufacturing CRC, there are two startup companies that I'm intimately involved in as a scientific advisor. So the first is TechSite, so Advanced Biomedical Coatings, and the second is Carina Biotech, so CAR T cell therapy. So from those, what I have taken from that is that research translation as a body of work is not only research, but it is the clinical understanding of what you're trying to translate and why there's an unmet need, and also the commercialisation. And what I've come to appreciate is that you need experts in all of those three components to make something work, to have that translation and get that traction. Now, when you're we will be familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome, and as a female, we are sometimes, unfortunately, find ourselves thinking, oh, I'm not worthy of this. I don't have the skill set. How am I possibly going to be able to achieve all of these? And we're getting better, and we're having our own internal voice saying, don't be ridiculous, move forward, you can do this. But when it comes to research translation, I find that I do recognise the imposter syndromes around research, around clinical application, and around commercialisation, because there are three major pillars that you need to establish to have that research translation. So now we're talking about three significant areas of how you're going to move that forward. Three areas of expertise. So I find that in all of these, there are challenges and barriers for women to succeed. All right, so there are a number of aspects that we're familiar with, and some of these points will resonate with you. There are some of the challenges and barriers we find are that women are often the major caregivers for children and parents. We undertake most of the domestic duties. We are expected to undertake more of the service roles at work. That caught me actually. I was like, that is true, I do that. I like to make sure that the fridge is clean. I like to make sure that people, have a cup of tea when they come to visit. So, these things all take time. We're more likely to be on short-term contracts. We spoke about those. We're more likely to experience sexual assault and harassment. The less well-known aspects are we're less likely to be seen as leaders. We're less likely to see ourselves as leaders. We're less likely to have our ideas recognised and taken up. We're less likely to be seen as technically competent, to be seen as committed to our careers, because we do want to go to our kids' sports days and we do want to bake that cake for their birthday. We're more likely to underreport our achievements and more likely to be excluded from decision making. So thinking about these, this all takes time. All of these, every time you're overlooked as a contributing force to a discussion and you need to reassert yourself, those things take time and you might miss opportunities. We also, just in thinking about what other challenges we have more empathy for our colleagues. And so those things take time. We do spend more time with students and staff members in discussing issues that are important to them. We also share more experiences, I think, and that brings a certain vulnerability to us as people and to leaders. And when we share and become vulnerable, sometimes people take advantage of that. And that also takes time to deal with and to recover from and to move forward. We have more passive behaviour, and this is an important one, I think. So our passive behaviour can lead to mixed messages being sent. An example might be, would you like to serve as a board member or contribute to this committee? Oh, let me just have a look at my calendar, or let me just think about that. That immediately sends a mixed message of, actually, I'm not sure whether she's interested, but you are interested, you really just do need to check your calendar. So we can change those messages so they're not mixed. Say, I would like to contribute. Please just give me a few minutes to check my calendar and get back to you. But in principle, I'm interested. Self-limiting belief, fear of failure. Some of these might be familiar to you. And negotiations take longer. Maybe it's the mixed messaging. Maybe it's because people are not sure whether we have time, whether we can take on these extra challenges. And our financial support is less. So we're less likely to get bonuses. We're less likely to elevate quickly in our roles. We're less likely to be given financial support or an additional PA or an assistant. And so all of these lead to slower progress. We are constantly negotiating, renegotiating, going back, saying, I do want that role. I would like to contribute to that committee. I would like to sit on that meeting to understand a little more about the clinical translation. And over time, this has a significant impact on our CV, our output, our KPIs, and over time we continue to fall back. And so it's important that we recognise those limitations and then that we try and prevent those from happening. All right, so it's not all about doom and gloom. How are we going to help ourselves? So let's help our partners. Let's give them more support for parental and carers leave. Let's give them more support for shared domestic duties, more support for service roles at work, and ask them to, or encourage them to consider the unconscious bias in whether we are good enough for the position, good enough to sit at the round table whether when we raise our hand that we should be asked what we'd like to contribute to a discussion. Let's help each other. Let's elevate each other into leadership positions. When you go into a room and you see that there are many men sitting around there, you're also there. Let's make sure that the next person that walks through the room and sits at the table is a female. There are plenty out there. We just need to make sure that they come to the table. We need more support for parental and carers leave. So, pardon me, what might an opportunity look like for that? There's no doubt that when women go on maternity leave, they struggle to keep up with their work progress and their KPIs. So how can we support that time, whether it's a few months of maternity leave or even 12 months, or maybe even longer? One idea is to have a competent administrative and laboratory staff person that can immediately step in as soon as someone goes on to maternity leave. Let them do some of the admin work and the paperwork, whether that's, reading PhD theses or writing ethics, writing papers, reporting for grants, and competent laboratory staff who can come in and do some of these experiments that keep the things ticking along. And so one proposal is that there's a new position created in a centre or a unit or a division that is a roaming position, that is a highly competent person paid at a really high level, but is interested in helping people. And so for 12 months might be seconded to this lab. And then when that person comes back from maternity leave, there's time for a handover, and then they move on to another lab, or a unit at work, an office or a department. So I feel like something like that might be really helpful. I would have found that so helpful if someone could write some of the paperwork for me or help my students progress, and I wouldn't have fallen back so far, or I would have stayed further along. So also encourage everyone to lean into courage, take on those opportunities. When someone asks you if you're interested, think about it. Yes, I am interested. And do that with courage and confidence. You can do it. You know you can do it. And you don't have to do it alone. You'll have a network around you. You can ask for advice, find a good mentor, and on the side, find ways to make those things happen. Be aware of passive behaviour. Don't be rude, but be assertive and say, yes, I do want that. That'd be great. Thanks for asking. And actively share experiences and life hacks. So one thing that I've really enjoyed over the last few years is meeting like-minded women who are really proactive and share. They share their favourite apps on how to get things done around the home and at work. They share podcasts that are really encouraging and uplifting, and also mentors. Find a really good mentor. And that's not easy to do. You've got to find someone that fits with you and you fit with them. Know your ambitions so that when somebody asks you whether you want to do something, yep, yes or no. And act when those opportunities arise. And we've all heard this, but pay it forward. Someone helps you, you help the next person. All right, so I had an opportunity to contribut to a review article just this year about women in science, and it was a contribution from women all over the world, scientific research leaders, and how they felt that what the barriers were for them, and how things could be improved, and there were many similarities. And a couple of key leads, perhaps that you might like to follow up, but there are many women who are committed to sharing their knowledge and expertise on how to move forward. So Brene Brown is very popular, and she has some great strategies. One that I've really taken to recently is Helen McCabe, and she has some podcasts on leadership series, and just 20 or 30 minutes, and she speaks to different women about how they have approached different sticky situations. And so I've taken bits and pieces from that. And there are some really great networks, one that we're in tonight, a couple of others are the South Australian leaders, and they meet every now and then, and they constantly challenge, inspire and help women to succeed. And the last one is Women in Innovation, who also a collective of like-minded women in South Australia who all want to help each other succeed. And every time I meet with any of these groups, I am left constantly inspired and invigorated and ready to move forward. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for your time, and I hope that there are some pieces in there that resonate with you, and I hope you're inspired to lean in, lead with courage and take those opportunities when they come. Thanks.